Today we're going to be looking at what happens when you take a negative and multiply by a negative. Let's go ahead and bring up a real life example. So let's say that you have $20 bill in your pocket. Okay, good. All right, that means that you have $20 net worth, right? No, not exactly, because you need to pay your friend Katie back for two burgers that she bought for you on two separate occasions, let's say. And let's say that each burger costs $3. So you actually owe her $6, right? So you've got to take the 20 and subtract 3 twice. So you really your net worth is really only $14 because of the debt. See, you have the $20 in your wallet, but you owe the $6. So you really only have $14 total. However, Katie is nice to you and decides that you don't have to pay her back for the two burgers. Let's say it's your birthday or something, and she decides that was your birthday present. So what you're actually doing is, or what she's doing is taking the debt away from you. And when you subtract, and that's actually what happens when you subtract a negative, you're taking the debt away. The debt is negative, but when she takes it away, she's taking a negative away. And what happens when you take a negative away? You add. So the $14 that you were actually worth after the debt gets re-added back with the $3 you owed, and that $20 bill in your pocket is now your net worth. You don't have to worry about the debt anymore. In other words, you had the 14 taking the debt into account, but she forgave you that debt, so she basically gave you $6, and now you have your $20 again in your pocket. You don't have to worry about the debt. And ultimately, what's happened is she took the two burgers that you owed and took that debt away. So she actually took the -3 and multiplied it by -2 to give you +6. And that, in essence, is what happens when you multiply negative numbers. You're taking debt away multiple times. She took the two burgers you owed her away. So you took one burger that you owed her, basically gave it to you, and then she did it again. So she did it multiple times, and therefore she took a debt, and multiplied it by a negative number, which gives you a positive. And that's why. And sometimes we get confused. Why is a negative times a negative equal positive? I know it looks weird, but that's why. So let's investigate this on the number line. A normal -3 times +2 would go to the left, right? And you end up at -6. But this is -3 times -2. So you're taking that debt away twice. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And so you can kind of think, and I've seen this before, and you know what? It works pretty well. If you have one negative and two negatives, what does that actually ultimately make? Well, if you flip them around a little bit, actually let's use the same color. If you flip them around a little bit, it makes a positive, right? So anyway, two negatives make a positive because you're taking debt away from somebody is the best way I can think of it. And therefore you're adding value back to them. So what we've actually just shown is -3 times -2 gives you +6. Now, I want you to take a look at this, which is a lot simpler. What's +3 times +2? Well, it's actually the same exact concept. 1, 2, 3. Let's use orange again. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. That also gives you 6 back. So both of these methods give you exactly the same number, and therefore -3 times -2 is the same as +3 times +2. Let's look at a few more number examples. -5 times -4 would give you +20, but so does +5 times +4. And I didn't mean to leave the parentheses in there, but it doesn't really matter. They don't have to be there. Even if they are there, it doesn't matter. So 5 times 4 is equal to +20. Therefore, -5 times -4 is the same as +5 times +4. And one more example with numbers. -8 times -12 gives you +96. Again, let's say somebody owes you 12 movie tickets, and or you owe somebody 12 movie tickets, and it cost $8. Well, that's $96 that you owe them. So you'd be -96 in the whole. But if they decide, don't worry about it, that was on me, then that's +96 given back to you. And also +8 times +12 is also positive 96. So those two are also equal to each other. So notice that two negatives is the same, multiplying two negatives is the same as multiplying two positives. What we're getting at in general is that negative a, which is some negative number, just like we looked at before, times another negative number is the same as if you multiply just the positive of those numbers, ignoring the negatives. And remember that a times b can just be written as ab. We don't have to write the multiplication sign in between because we assume it's there. That's what AB means, A times B, or XY or whatever. So therefore, in general rule is negative A times negative B is equal to positive A times positive B. And again, I can't emphasize enough, we look at these simple concepts in math. You could call them identities or just simple, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not really a theory. It's maybe you could call it a postulate, but it's just a simple fact in math that comes up so often. It's a simple concept that comes up so often that you need to be sure you understand it and that you're real comfortable doing it. Because as you go through algebra and calculus, it's going to come up a whole lot. And it's important to understand why. So let's look at this first official example, negative x times negative y. Well, guess what? We have two negatives, and we just talked about what happens when you multiply two negatives. So therefore, the answer is, if you take a negative number x and multiply by negative number y, you get positive xy. And you know what? As me personally, I can say that if you were to put plus xy, I'm totally okay with that. I know some teachers might say, oh, that's not simplified enough. You don't need a positive there. But if that conceptually helps you to understand that two negatives make a positive, by all means, for my, as far as I'm concerned, I'm totally okay with it. Okay? Let's say we have a negative number m. What would you have to multiply in order to get positive mn back? So if this is negative and we don't know what this is, but the answer is positive, well, this would have to be negative, right? And so if the answer is mn, then what's in here must be negative n. So negative m, let's see if we can get this real quick. Negative m times negative n gives you positive mn. Negative times a negative is a positive. Same thing for this one. What times negative g gives you positive fg? Well, it would have to be a negative because a negative times a, negative equals positive. Therefore, it's negative f times negative g gives you positive fg. And remember, sometimes we get lost with the variables, and just remember, you could just imagine like the first example we did. Let's say that's negative 3 and that's negative 2. That would give you 3 times 2. So maybe you could let the f be 3 and the g be 2. Same thing, right? So anytime you get lost and you get confused with variables, just imagine there's numbers there, because all a variable means is it could be any number. And it's just more like a rule, basically. Okay, let's read this one together. Negative number a times a negative number b times a positive number c would give you what? And I did 3 this time because if we have two negatives, and this is positive, right? Because there's no negative sign there, so it's implied positive. If we have two negatives and a positive, what does that give us? Well, we talked about the fact before that if you have an even number of negatives, your answer is going to be positive. How many negatives do we have? We have 2, right? And that's an even number. So therefore the answer must be positive, right? So if it's negative a times negative b times positive c, the answer is going to be positive abc. Okay, and again, if we had an odd number of negatives, then the answer would be negative. Like if we had 3, 5, 7, 9, or whatever. Okay, so hope that makes sense to you. And if you have any questions, let me know. I'd be happy to answer them for you. Let's look at one more example. Okay, let's read this together real quick. Negative x times positive y times what gives you positive xyz. We only have one negative here, but the answer is positive. So we kind of have to add what? We have to add another negative here to make two negative numbers, or an even number of negatives, to end up with a positive answer. So if it's negative x times y times what gives you positive xyz, then the answer must be a negative z. Again, we know that because we have two negative numbers, and that's going to give us a positive x, y, and z. And just like we talked about before, There was no positive there to begin with, so we can write it there if it helps us, but really it's not there at all. I mean, we assume it's positive, so therefore the answer is negative z, and that will give us the positive xyz. That's it for this lesson. Again, it's titled Simplify a Negative Times a Negative. When you multiply a negative times a negative, you get a positive.